We're beginning today where we left off on last week's page, hence, we're kind of in the middle of a chapter, middle of 28, and we'll just go over one verse that we already did in Proverbs itself, so we can look at the what the Talmud has to say about it. Because as I often mention to you, one of my goals, educational goals in this, is not only the ongoing study of Torah, which itself is a goal for itself, Torah lishma, as we say, but also for each of us to have a better feeling for what I would call, in Hebrew it's called oryanut, um, Jewish knowledgeability, Jewish comprehension. What are some of the main things that come up in Jewish literature? And and you're really limited. You're very often limited if you don't if you haven't been an academic study of Judaica, or you haven't been a Jewish educator. So from time to time, I'll emphasize, as you know, certain verses that are popular in modern Hebrew, in Israeli Hebrew. Other times, we'll bring up issues that are sayings that get a life of their own in Talmudic literature and later rabbinic literature. And one of those is what we're having today. And it's something that made a very strong impression on me when I was a when I was a 15-year-old spending the year in Israel. I had an extremely dynamic educator, a man named Chaim Perry, one of the greatest educators in the state of Israel. It's not just me. Other people have said as well, especially when it comes to the Ethiopian immigrants. He was for many years the director of a village, a youth village called Yamin Ord in the Carmel Mountains, not far from Zichron Yaakov. Had a huge influence on my life. And I remember him the day that he stood in class and explained this not so much this verse, but this concept from the Talmud while he was quoting Maimonides. So I'd like to begin with that. I've a few things though, just for the last few years, we mentioned so often how important it is our study in the context of what's happening in the world. It was the war, the horrible war in Gaza, which still continues. Uh, Palestinians are dying both in Gaza and in West Bank. So are Israelis, especially Arab Israelis, in the crime spree that continues to escalate. The place is an absolute mess. We care about it, but I personally want to care about it in a just fashion. I care about Somalia, I care about Darfur, I care about a lot of places, but it's hard to focus so much. And of course, here in the United States, what's been happening. Um, and I want to connect something very much to what's happening today, later on in the text that we have on the second page. Um, but as far as for so often we mentioned the stopping the war, stopping the starvation, and the freeing of the hostages. And while the freedom of that last hostage, Ron, who his body had been held for so long, and finally came back home yesterday. Um, it does hopefully put an end to a certain, or beginning of an end to a certain circle of trauma amongst our Israeli brothers and sisters. And hopefully, instead of this being, hopefully this is another step in the right direction. Let it say that. So we dedicate our study today to the memory of those Israelis and those Palestinians and all those who have died in this horrible, horrible last few years. We dedicate this study today to the memory of those who have died and not just the white folks that have been shot and murdered by ICE, but everybody else as well, the people of color who we have heard less about, unfortunately. I'm sorry to say that, at least that's how it seems to me. It's all death, it's all unjust, and it all needs us to be more wise in our lives. And hence we study the book of Proverbs. To me, that's the connection to what we're doing. And thank you all for making this possible, because I had never, ever thought of studying the book of Proverbs this way until somebody suggested it. And no, don't go suggesting, no, we're not doing Job. Well, at least not yet. Okay, so Les, if you would, you have been a diligent citizen of the United States, of the county of Riverside, and have rendered your just, wise judgment in a case. We won't ask what the case was about. We won't know the case how you voted, but we're happy that it seems like you're done with jury duty. Is that the case?
Yes, it's all over. It was a civil case, and I felt like King Solomon.
No less than King Solomon. Yeah, okay. Not
I,
one of the.
I basically said they can cut it in half, and then you could see the reaction of the people.
There you go.
I took this from, I know Proverbs isn't real, well, it was written maybe by Solomon, but anyway,
No, what the answer, the correct answer would have been yes, and I was so much better at being a jury member after studying the book of Proverbs. That's what I was expecting you to say. Okay.
would you like me to start reading?
If you could read that first verse that we did last week, that one verse that's plucked out, and then the Babylonian Talmud. Well, first, we'll talk about the verse itself. Yeah, go ahead.
No one who covers up faults will succeed. One who confesses and gives them up will find mercy.
Okay, pretty common sense. We talked about this a little bit last week, I think. Not, I think we did. The and it's talking about the inner world of someone who is involved in transgressing, making a mistake, transgressing, doing something wrong. So if you think you're going to cover it up, which many of us do, whatever it is, whether it's stealing something, God forbid, or hurting someone, or picking our nose, whatever it is, we think we're going to clean, we're going to hide it. It comes to light, right? Almost everything in the end comes to light, especially in the digital world that we live in today. So
I have a question.
sure.
Um, I find sometimes the words mercy and the word grace sometimes is used in a religious context and in a sort of dictionary context. And can you sort of give us a little Jewish version of mercy and then grace because it's
Right. So it's funny you asked that question because in the next section, you'll see in the third line, there's a word that's boldened, yivashea. And I had actually expected to talk about that then. And the reason for doing so is kind of a reaction to one or two participants who are with me now in the Monday group with the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County, who I've never met before, who talk a lot about the language and how it must be Christian influence. So just to say, I mean, the word that's used here is mercy, right? There's confession and there's mercy. So let's take the first line. Okay, if you think you're going to cover it up, it's not going to work. Second line, I'm going to do it in Hebrew. Umodeh. Modeh means to admit. Ashamnu, baganu, the vidui, that's from the same word. Vidui comes from the words modeh, ani modeh. But modeh also means I admit. It means I admit I also give thanks. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. The prayer that we say as soon as that I do every single morning, as soon as I swing my legs out of bed. That is when I've really decided to get out of bed. Then I say modeh ani lefanecha. I give thanks to you, God, for this life, that I'm still alive this morning. So modeh in this context is one who has given confession. In a Christian context, when we hear Roman Catholic, we hear confession, we think, I mean, usually from TV and movies, we think of the booth, right? And the screen, which, by the way, I don't think happens as much as we think it does. I've known, the few Catholic priests that I know tell me that their confessional is usually on the bench, sitting next to somebody, or in the office. That formal kind of confession. But confession is very Jewish, so we're all right on that one, right, Les?
yeah.
Confession is Jewish. Okay. Ozev, that means to leave or to give up, to stop doing. That's a part of the word. There's no Christian English kind of, or what once somebody called me Biblish. They think that words that are in English that are religious sounding because of the Christian culture, they call them Biblish, right? Like salvation would be Biblish. That's at least the way I heard it. Now comes the word Yerucham, will be met with rachamim. I know you can't translate with the translation, but the word rachamim is compassion, mercy. It comes from rechem, the same word, racham, lerachem, is the same word as womb. There's a connection there as well, a motherly love, perhaps. God's love for birthing the people of Israel. There's a lot of ways you could go on with that. But we say, Rachemna. We say in our prayer, Rachemna Adonai Eloheinu, have mercy upon us. El Malay Rachamim, from the funeral service, from memorial service. Oh God, full of Rachamim, of mercy. So that's the Jewish Hebrew context, which means that Rachamim is it's not pity. Mercy, I think, is the best, but it's connecting, God connecting with a human being, or a human being connecting with another human being, with compassion and with love. It is very connected to the word chesed, which can mean righteousness, but also means loving kindness.
Doesn't Rachmanos, though, imply pity?
Rachmanis in Yisrael, Rachmanis is Rachmanut, which you can tell is not just Ashkenazic Hebrew, but into the Yiddish, and in the Yiddish, Rachmanis is a pity, pathetic, sometimes even pathetic. Rachmanis, we will say often. Those of us that went to yeshiva will quote the Aramaic Rahman Litzlan, Rahman Litzlan, that it actually means to pray to God for this to be fixed somehow. But it's not. Rahmanut is also compassion, and there's a thin line between pity and compassion, right? I'm not sure how to do that, dictionary wise. But does that give you a fuller version of the Hebrew?
Yeah, yeah,
Hebrew
thank
Jewish.
you.
Okay. All right. So Modeh Ozev Yerucham, I've heard that term a lot. I don't think I necessarily knew the quote. I knew the meaning of it, but through the Talmud or through Maimonides, as I said, through Dr. Chaim Perry, my teacher, my beloved teacher, mentor and teacher. He so But you hear Israelis say, especially Israelis who are speaking a higher form of Hebrew, that is, people who have read, academics who have read more. You don't hear it on the street in the shuk, in the marketplace so much. Although maybe you do, I don't know. Modev ozev Yerucham, and so you hear that term, and here's how it appears in the Babylonian Talmud in the Tractate of Tanit, which has to do with public fasts. Go ahead, Les.
Okay. Rabada bar Ahava said, a person who has a transgression in his hand, and he confesses but does not repent for his sin, to what is he comparable? To a person who holds in his hand a dead, creeping animal. As in this situation, even if he immerses in all the waters of the world, his immersion is ineffective for him. However, if he has thrown the animal from his hand, once he has immersed in 40 seah, the immersion is immediately effective for him. As it is said, he who covers his transgressions shall not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them shall obtain mercy. And it states elsewhere, let us lift up our heart with our hands to God in heaven.
Okay, so mixing two things here. The metaphor is purification from something which is impure. Dead bodies are impure, things that have touched their dead bodies are impure. A woman menstruating in her cycle, that's impure. A woman who's given birth is impure. Anything contact with dead is impure, but also certain living animals are impure. I mean, to me, it's a lizard. I'm thinking of in the land of Israel, it's one of those big fat lizards. If you ever lived in Israel, there's all these lizards that are like this big, like everywhere, and they're often they're bathing in the sun. Sunbathe, at least in the parts of Israel that I lived in for many years. You see them less in Jerusalem than you do in the lower plain, especially in the countryside. Lots of big lizards. And I can remember going to the mikveh, because when I was younger, I went to the mikveh every Friday. I learned that from Chabad, to go to prepare myself for Shabbat. There was a mikveh in Kibbutz Yavne, not the woman's mikveh, but the old mikveh, which was open for men. And my yeshiva was next to Kibbutz Yavne. And I remember walking in once and seeing a dead lizard, this big, floating on the water, which told me it's maybe not the time to go into that particular mikveh to purify myself. Now, purifying yourself has to be in a minimum water collection of what's called living water. It's not been stored. It has to come from a stream, from rain directly into the pit, whatever it is, all sorts of intricate laws, which the Talmud talks tons about. And it has to be at least 40, it's a measurement. Let's just call it 40 pints of water. It's actually a very small area that you've got to be in order to purify yourself. Now, you're impure, You go into the mikveh, you think you're pure, right? But what if you're still holding that impure object, that lizard, that dead lizard in your hand? Can you ever be purified? No. You've got to throw it aside, and then you can go in the water, and then you'll be purified. That's the metaphor. What it's talking about is if you come, let's say on Yom Kippur, and you say Ashamnu, Bagannu, Gazalnu, I say all these things, Gazalnu, and we have stolen, and I say I'm so sorry, I should not have stole that money from my friend, whatever, and yet I still have that money, or I continue to steal that money, or I continue to speak badly about people, and whatever it might be. Looks like I've got some cottage cheese in my beard. Sorry there. That's damn. Madalena, you gotta remind me. I gotta check the video beforehand. Come on, Madalena, I need you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Didn't see that.
Yeah, I probably
I
should have.
don't have great sight.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm waiting for the whole beard to be absolutely white, then I won't have the cottage cheese problem anymore. Okay. So that's the metaphor for you. You obviously can't continue to punch somebody and say, I'm sorry, and keep doing it. You don't get. So bringing that back up to the verse, umodeh ve'ozev yirucham, when somebody confesses and leaves that world, in other words, has it in their hand, that sin in their hand, and lets it go, throws it away, then they will be forgiven. Here, find mercy equals forgiven as well. Okay. Whether it's God, by the way, or whether it's another person, that's a natural kind of a thing. That term, tovel usheretz biado, which is in, I didn't light it up in bold here, but the one who's in the water with the dead lizard or something like it in his hand, tovel v'sheretz biado is used all the time, at least amongst people that have a religious education in Israel, for somebody who's a hypocrite, somebody who is another one is a chad b'peh v'chad b'lev, one thing in his mouth and another thing in his heart. What would be a good term? I mean, we could think of all sorts of examples today, right? Although maybe the sea change that's happened in recent years is that people are no longer pretending. No longer say, "Oh, that's a horrible thing that shouldn't have happened." Whatever. No. Oh, there was nothing horrible happened, right? It's fake news, right? So Tovel v'sheretz biado. It's famous, at least it became famous back to the story I started with, because it is a key part of Rambam, Maimonides' directions, Hilchot Tshuva, the halachot, the laws of repentance, that so many of us used to study, especially in the month of Elul, before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in preparation for Rosh Hashanah. It's something you got to hammer in because it's such a regular human thing to do, is to know, not always, but to know that you're doing something wrong and apologize for it, and yet you keep doing it. You can't break that habit. Whether it's self-infliction, of addictions of different kinds, of whatever things we do to hurt ourselves and we can't leave it, or what we constantly do to other people. Comments, questions. Richard.
I was curious. I hate to be the 12-year-old in the group, but the mikvah with the dead lizard, does it need a mikvah?
That's a fascinating idea. I was so haunted, and I think I dreamt about it afterwards. It was traumatic for me, and I think we let somebody know, but we didn't really know who to let know because nobody had really. I just heard we had permission to go there. We just went. I think we knew where the key was or something. In any case, no, I think you have to drain the mikveh and then start over. But so the mikveh itself doesn't become tameh. But that's interesting question. And you say 12-year-old, Richard, but entire books have been written about these kinds of things, these kind of
Like
questions.
12-year-olds?
No, but these kind of questions. And I want everybody to notice that Richard once again has the halo thing going on.
I don't know how to get. I close the blinds. I have the TV
No, we
on.
love it, Richard. Richard,
I have a circle light. I
Richard,
don't know what else
you're
to
the
do.
pure one. You are the pure.
Oh,
You're the young person who hasn't had time. You're the 12 that hasn't had time yet to sin, opportunity to
yeah.
sin. You're still pure of heart. Okay, all right. Anything else? Tovel v'sheretz biado. Strong symbol. Okay, wanted to share that. Now we go on to section we didn't get to last week. And Manny, if you'd like to read 17 to 28. Manny?
Sorry. Anyone oppressed by blood guilt will flee to a pit. Let none offer support. One who lives blamelessly will be delivered, but one whose ways are crooked will fall all at once. Those who till their land will have food in plenty, but those who pursue vanities will have poverty in plenty. A dependable man will receive many blessings, but one in a hurry to get rich will not go unpunished. To be partial is not right. Even one who is valiant may do wrong for a piece of bread. A miserly man runs after wealth. He does not realize that loss will overtake it. One who reproves a person will in the end find more favor than a flatterer. Anyone who robs their father and mother and says it is no offense is the companion to a vandal. A gaping maw provokes quarrels, but one who trusts God shall enjoy prosperity. Those who trust their own instincts are dullards, but those who live by wisdom shall escape. Those who give to the poor will not be in want, but those who turn a blind eye will be roundly cursed. When the wicked rise up, everyone goes into hiding, but when they perish, the righteous increase.
Yeah, I know it's a lot to take in, and
Yeah.
in the older days, perhaps I would have divided this into 5 subsections, but at some point we have to finish the book of Mishlei. I didn't realize until recently how long we've been going at it. So let's take some initial questions or comments, and then I'll share with you some of my highlights.
Mhm.
Yes, Klaus, just unmute, please.
Down towards maybe six lines from the bottom, it says, "Those who trust their own instincts are dullards." I don't quite understand that. Those who trust their own, but those who live by wisdom shall escape. I don't quite understand why trusting your own instinct makes you a dullard.
Yeah. So this is a case where both lines of the proverb need to be read together and understood. The opposite of, or the parallel, or the opposite, but of to the word instincts is wisdom. And so this is something which is different than a lot of advice we get today. Go with your gut, go with your instinct, go with your feelings. I mean, most TV programs about detectives and things like that and secret agents are based on instincts, and they're usually the people that flaunt the laws that are the ones who succeed. That seems to be a winning recipe when it comes to movies and TV. But here it's saying, no, no, no. Instead of your instincts, it needs to be, let me put it in your terms, Klaus, in your professional terms, it needs to have some data, some scientific proof, scientific data. I think that's what wisdom would be here. It's got to be proven methodologies. Don't you may think you're the greatest expert at something, but there's actually
More stuff to it. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. That's how I would understand it.
Thank you.
Les.
Yeah, on the 9th line, to be partial is not right. Is partial meaning not fair or even-handed, or is it mean not being complete?
So here too, it's important to read the both lines together. Partial, when and it's understood here as you were judging someone. Here, once again, Les, just to let you know, you're sitting in the jury box. If you like whatever reasons, the person is Jewish, the person is cute, whatever the person is that you're partial to, you just need to know that even the best person can screw up, because when you're hungry, you'll do stuff. And bread here, of course, I think is just a metaphor for wanting something. The greed, want, desire overturns often. And look at the book of wisdom, the book of Proverbs has been pretty kind of either or here, right? There's not a lot of boths, and in boths here.
How are they using valiant? How are they using the word valiant then? What's the
The Hebrew here is haker panim loto. By the way, hakarat panim is something from the Torah already, that the judges have to be careful not to, means to recognize the face, not to say, "Oh, Sam, how you doing today?" As you're supposed to not know or pretend you don't know. You don't take into consideration the knowledge of any person, friendship. So that's in the first line. The second line in Hebrew is V'al pat lechem yivsha gever. And for even for a piece of bread, will a person, Yisha Gever, the literal translation, will a person do wrong? I think they added valiant because it's not just any person. I think to make it more impactful, stronger. I think they added it. I don't. I
is it
didn't
like
mention.
righteous? Are they meaning like a right?
Yeah, respectable, but righteous, yes. Yeah, noble. Let me just check to see if there's perhaps an emendation based on the Septuagint or something else, but I didn't make a thing. A second.
Like even an honorable judge can be bought. Is that what?
Yeah, yes, yeah. Uh, oh. So his translation is showing partiality is not good, but a man may transgress for a piece of bread. And a man, it relates poorly to the first if it's translated, but a man is concerned for. Yeah, he doesn't relate to the fact that JPS added the word valiant there.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I always think
Ivan.
Prince
Yes,
Valiant.
Harold.
Prince Valiant.
Yes. Go ahead, Harold.
I was just thinking about in the middle, the verse, one who reproves a person. Initially, to me, the word reprove can mean kind of scolding or lecturing. And to me, at least initially, it could have a negative connotation. So I was surprised when it says, will in the end find favor. But then I put it in the context of today, and rightly or wrongly. And I thought of somebody who, let's say, I'm thinking of what goes on in the Oval Office today. One who reproves a person, that is somebody who tries to speak truth to power, or maybe in this case, truth to idiocy, will in the end find more favor than a bootlicker. Is that what that kind of means? I mean, I'm putting it in a modern context.
Yeah, I understand. And the word mochiach appears here, and I think in the next section as well, and I dwelt more on that. Mochiach means reprimand, right? So, ocheach tochiach et amitecha. Lo tisa alav et achet. I may have got the words exact, but that's in Leviticus. You shall surely reprimand your fellow human being, otherwise you will carry the burden of that sin. In other words, you've got to speak up. Now, that's what mochiach adam achreichem. But no. The same combination of mochiach and machlik. Oh, I know. We're going to have it later on. Machlik. So I no, I didn't. This didn't jump out at me, and I'm not really sure. Yeah, I think okay. So I think at the end, if you do speak truth to power, and you persevere, in the end you will find favor with that person. That person will eventually come around. In other words, you should keep at it. I think that's what this means here.
Okay.
Mochiach adam achrei chen. Oh, mochiach adam achrei chen nimsa mimachlik lashon. I think the syntax needs to be parsed differently. A person who reprimands his fellow person, a, he will arrive at more favor than those who are slippery of tongue.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. Okay, I'm responding to. I think I'm all right. No, it's just the white in my beard. Okay, sorry about that. We're back to my beard and the cottage cheese. All right, apologies. All right, it's been a rough few days, guys. What can I say? But Sasha's coming home soon, in 2 weeks, and I'm feeling a bit better physically. Okay. All right. Next up, who else we got?
You want to talk about the robbing father and mother?
Yeah, I'll just look up at just a few things before that. Third line Hebrew. As per your comment beforehand, your question beforehand, less about Christian sounding English or Christian sounding terms. Someone who walks straight, who lives blamelessly, holech tamim, lives blamelessly, walks in innocence, not in naivete, but in lack of crime. Ivashea will attain salvation. The word yesha is salvation, right? Now we know that's also Yeshua is Jesus' name in Hebrew, not Yeshu. Yeshu was shortened because of many words that have the guttural, the ayin at the end, get shortened, like Eliezer was shortened to Lazer. The aleph and the ayin disappeared at some point and became Reb Lazer. And so Yeshua became Yeshu, although some people feel it was an anti-Semitic change of Jesus' name to Yeshu, and it stands for, as some Jews in the Middle Ages saw it standing for, Yimach Shemo V'Zichro. It's an acronym for may his name be blotted out, may his name and memory be blotted out. Unkind Jewish parts of that long-going fight between Jews and Christians, polemic. But many people feel that the word salvation in English and redemption are Christian terms. And this came up in our study of either Tobit or I think it was Monday. In the Monday, somebody thought this was Christian influence on these Jewish texts. So no, it's very biblical. So that's why I underlined the Yivashea there. Yeah, I decided not to delve into Oved Admoto. You know, someone who tills their own land will have food in plenty. I guess my idea there was thinking about how this, in recent years, maybe decades, this kind of, at least from a trendy point of view, from an ideological point of view, this move back from industrial farming, some people in their ideology is to eat local, whether it's restaurants as part of the for gastronomic reasons or ideological reasons, or whether it's folks that want to get what's it called from your local farmers to see something. You get a box of stuff every few weeks. Doesn't really happen here much in Palm Springs, but you know what I'm talking about, where you sign up. These things that connect people, and all the more so people that grow their own vegetables, or their own herbs, whatever it is. There's something about the connection of us growing the food ourselves is more satisfying. Oved admato yizba lechem. It's not just those who till their land will have food in plenty, but yizba is not just plenty. Yizba will be satisfied. I thought that as well. looking. These are texts that perhaps I would use for, the for a wholesome vegan cookbook or something of local produce cookbook. That would be great.
My friend Nicolisa has an enormous vegetable garden at her place in Bonsall. And whenever I go there, I get fresh salad. Those
Well,
have bits and then so it's really good. It tastes a lot better.
would you please share this with her? In fact, I think you should put it on a plaque to put in the entrance of the garden.
Oh, that's a great idea.
There's a gift for her birthday, for
Yeah.
her next birthday.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so now we're back down to what Les asked about. Gozel, I'm going to go with the Hebrew words. Gozel is to steal or kipe, as we used to say when we were kids. They say that gonev is in rabbinic understanding. Gonev is to steal something quietly. Gozel is to outright take it in front of witnesses. But in biblical language, it's real. When you steal from one who steals from one's father and one's mother, and says this is not a crime, which I think is a natural kind of a thing that happens. They're my parents. They're supporting me. They have supported me. They did support me. Whatever. Not a crime. That same person, it can be said, is a companion to a corrupt individual. In other words, that's on the borderline of being a criminal. All right. Now, that seems to be common sense about respecting one's parents, respecting one's inheritance with siblings. Believe me, folks, part of my my distress, I say with a smile, my distress in recent days and weeks is this other job that I have in dealing with my mother's estate. It just never ends. The paperwork that never ends, trying to whatever it is. You all know. All of you, I think, have been in this place before, and making sure that I'm true to my siblings as well, in any kinds of outlay, any kinds of costs that need. Yeah, okay, you understand what I'm saying. This is on my mind, but I also brought this because of what's in the Babylonian Talmud. And so we're going to jump to that in a second, but also look at the next term beneath that, just because we're right there, Rachav Nefesh. I was puzzled by the translation, the new JPS translation that says gaping maw. Those are gaping, yes, maw is not a word that I use, and it seemed a little bit overly colorful, perhaps, a gaping maw. So I looked at the older JPS translation, 85, a greedy man. And then, and both of them are interesting translations, but the Hebrews, Rechav Nefesh, one who has the width of soul. A wide soul, to me, sounds kind of cool, right? I like to think of myself as the Rechav Nefesh, if I was using the Hebrew. And so, Dan, if you would, first do the comment that it's out of order, but if you could do the Rabbi Abraham Ibn Ezra's comment on what Rachav, a wide soul, means, and then we'll get to how the text of stealing from one's parents was used in the Talmud. Go ahead, Dan.
Wide soul, as in when one's soul or ego becomes so big, they're no longer fearful of God.
That's that's flipping it, huh? Yeah. Yeah, someone whose head is swollen, a swollen head, right? Yeah, we say that in English, right? Swollen head? Yeah. Okay. Comments or questions about that? The psychology of that, Megan. This is stuff for you. This goes on your little pad of things that you use in your.
By the way, the word "ma" means sort of jaw, an open jaw.
Yeah. When I think of a ma, for some reason I'm picturing the skull of a cow or something that's stuck open. I don't know, ma, or a dinosaur. From the movies, the dinosaurs with all those teeth. They're just about to snap before. Okay.
Or somebody who opens their mouth, who speaks, provokes quarrels. Talks too much.
Yeah. That's why I don't think a greedy man is so appropriate here. That's why Gapima, I think, is a better translation, right? But how do they get from Rachav Nefesh, the width of soul? That's what interests me. And Ibn Ezra is the only explanation that I found relatively satisfying, certainly interesting. And of course, the opposite is, but one who, and this is why Ibn Ezra's commentary makes sense, is the second line, because one who believes in God, who has bitachon, who has faith in God's presence, God's control, well, that person will enjoy prosperity. Everybody around that person will enjoy prosperity. So that's why I think Ibn Ezra's commentary makes sense to me. Anything else on that line? Okay, Dan, if you would continue from Masechet Brachot, the Babylonian Talmud.
Rabbi Hanina Bar Papa said, anyone who derives benefit from this world without a blessing, it is as if he stole from God and the community of Israel, as it is stated. Whoever robs his father and mother and says there is no transgression, he is the companion of a destroyer. His father refers to none other than God, as it is stated. Is he not your father who created you, who made you and established you? His mother refers to none other than the community of Israel, as it is stated. Hear, my son, the discipline of your father, and do not forsake the Torah of your mother.
Which brings us back to the beginning of our study. Shema bani musar avicha, v'al titosh Torah imecha, which we hear my friend Craig sing so lovely about. And prayers for Craig Taubman's healing. His dislodged retina 3 times in the last many months, is going through a very, very difficult time. So we need to remember to include Craig in our prayers as well. His beautiful voice that has accompanied us in our study online so often, and a lot of the music that's in our prayer as well has come from my friend Craig. So back to bringing us back to, so those are the proof texts. Let's start with the proof texts. When it says father and mother in Proverbs, the rabbi says, well, father, and we'll get to the first part, which is more interesting, more important. Father, that's Avinu Shebashamayim, our God who art thou art in heaven, right? Which sounds very Christian also, right? But Avinu Shebashamayim is pretty Jewish, right? Avinu, our father, Avinu Malkeinu, our father, our king. Avinu Shebashamayim, our father in heaven. El Malrachamim. It's all these words are all very Jewish and very Hebrew, but we have heard them more translated into English in a Christian context. And that's an interesting comment on how Les, you and I and others who grew up, for instance, in the conservative movement with the Silverman Siddur and the way that rabbis who were educated in Jewish theological seminary where they spoke, how is it exactly that those words were abdicated? I mean, when did that happen in the 50s or so? An interesting question of the history of religion, history of Judaism in at least in North America. So that, and then mother, so father, that's easy. Mother's a little bit of a stretch because mother here becomes, we understand mother as the rest of Israel. But we also get that, right? People of Israel, motherhood. Okay. All right. That's the proof text. And the proof text for mother is that parallel in the first chapter of Proverbs that we did. Now, let's go back to what is he actually saying. What's the context? Even without knowing the context in the tractate. The tractate is called Blessings, right? So what's the context here? For me to drink from this cup of coffee in the morning without saying Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol niyah bidvaro, which I did before. I do it again for educational purposes, or to partake of the challah on Shabbat without hamotzi lechem min haaretz, or to smell a rose in my garden without saying borei minei asabim or whatever it is, or cloves borei minei besamim, whatever the blessing is, to anything that I have derived pleasure from without giving thanks to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, to God. That's as if I'm stealing, not just from God. And that's the interesting thing in the Talmud. Not only stealing from God, but it's just I'm stealing from the people of Israel as well. Now, in the ethnocentric world of the Talmud and the rabbis, people of Israel is the world, is the Welt. Even in Yiddish, in later Yiddish, when people say the Welt, well, I think in the beginning they meant the Jewish people, the world. Welt is world. The Welt is the world. And then afterwards, at least when I ran into it in the 70s and 80s, it was the Welt were Orthodox Jews speaking about Orthodox Judaism. That's the world, the Welt. And so that's less surprising, but still, to my mind, this again, this like Tovel v'sheretz biado, immersing in a mikveh with a dead lizard in your hand, and this not eating, not benefiting from the world without saying a blessing. These are things that I learned in my teen years that had such a deep impression on me. Um, it, it, some blessings are about self-awareness, like we do Shabbat morning, Birkot HaShachar. They're about, we give thankfulness, but they're also about self-awareness and societal awareness. But this pleasure of giving thanks for anything that's pleasurable is, to me, this is a very important part of Jewish education. When I was at Mevakshe Derech, I mentioned before, the first egalitarian congregation in Israel, started in the early 60s by disciples, students of Mordechai Kaplan of blessed memory in Jerusalem, and I was the educational director. We started a preschool. I've told this story before. Wanted to attract young families in a rather old congregation. We had a beautiful building, and we did start a lot of work. We put it in. We had two groups of 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, and the twins, Yael and Noah, who many of you have met. They were in that preschool as well, which is why, by the way, they don't know English. They know English, but their English is not as good as the other girls because I spoke to them only in Hebrew, because I was with them every day running this preschool. And we got a complaint a few months into the beginning of the preschool. Everybody was happy with everything we were doing, including the food. Everything was good, except for why are we indoctrinating these little children so much with religion? Because I was teaching, my part in the program was to do prayers with the kids in the morning with 2 puppets, with my talit and tefillin, and also we taught them brachot. And I said, this is what it looks like to me. This is how I'm presenting it to you. This is not about God. This is about saying thank you. And in the same way, of course, it's about God for me, right? But in the eyes and the ears of these secular Israelis, where God is a huge challenge, but it's like what we said to our kids. Those of us that have had children, or grandchildren, we often want them to say thank you when somebody has given them something, either us or somebody else. What do you say, right? That what do you say thing. And as controversial as that might be today, I understand in raising children, this is what I see around me. And when Sasha and I were raising our daughters, that was not controversial at all. And it was, and I think, and the parents got that idea. It's not about God. It's about giving thanks. It's about saying, in Hebrew it's sorry because it's directed to God in second person. Baruch atah, praised are you. But still, and so that's why I wanted to share this. Again, these are 2 key Talmudic passages for me in my Judaism. One of having integrity, that's with the mikveh thing, and the other one of gratitude, living this life of gratitude, and using the Jewish tradition as a practice, a spiritual practice, which lifts me up, lifts up the world. By the way, the blessing for me for many decades now is not just aimed at God. The blessing is aimed at the farmers and especially the migrant workers down the road, down Highway 10, east on Highway 10. Those truck drivers that bring it, those people that work in the supermarket for minimum wage. There's a lot of people that go into that blessing. Okay, sermon is over. Comments, questions? Dan.
You covered a lot of ground with this idea of expressing of thanks. In your later examples, you particularized it to people you identify, but for other things like, I don't know, hey, I woke up this morning. There's a sense of wonder. Okay. Gratitude seems to me to need an object. You're thankful to an agent, or are you just thankful for the event itself?
So in my mind, it's never one thing. It's multiple options. Like
Mhm.
you've been with me dozens and dozens, if not more times, for Birkot HaShachar, for the morning blessings and Shabbat Tefillah. And so you know that those vary, right? I'm almost never reading the translation that's in our prayer book, right?
Mhm.
So there might be a time when I've just read about the mis the the lack injustice towards the farm workers down the road, and so the bracha that morning on my bell pepper, which comes from down the road, I assume, because that's where bell pepper capital Coachella Valley is going to have them in mind as representatives of Kadosh Baruch Hu, of people who are mistreated, but they've been created in God's image. Another time, I may be out in the mountains, and there's something edible that I know from my days in the Boy Scouts. Thank God for the Boy Scouts in my life as well. And I'll eat something, a yucca flower, for instance, and then the blessing is purely to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, to the Holy One, and I would add into the creation, to the earth itself as well. One doesn't exclude the other. There's different times to uplift those things. Rita Claire. Yeah.
I'm just thinking that there's so many different ways you can say, you can show your appreciation and your thankfulness. And to me, the biggest way is how you treat and handle people. Uh, Even in just talking on the telephone. Yesterday, I had an experience of learning a new technical thing about my TV, for example. And the gentleman that was helping me was so patient. And I appreciated that so much. And I let him know it. And, people like to hear that. It gives them, it gives them a good feeling. And that's the way I think about having gratitude and being thankful. Sometimes you don't have to say the words, you could just how you treat and how other people with respect.
Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. Let me just go back to the context of the Talmud here. The specific context are blessings over fruit of the trees, fruit of the earth, smelling things. That's the chapter, that's the section of the Talmud. And it's given, although there's nothing in the Torah that says you shall bless, right? It's still considered to be part of halacha. It's part of, I wouldn't call it a mitzvah. It's not one of the 613 mitzvot commandments, but the proof text given for doing this is actually based on a negative than based on a positive. It's not because when you eat the fruit of the tree and you take before you take a bite of it, say this blessing because you're filled with thanks, whatever. I know you were talking more about human beings now, Reed. I'm just going back to the context in the Talmud. But rather, if you take a bite without giving thanks, it's as if you're stealing. And not only are you stealing from God / the earth, but you're also stealing from the people of Israel, from the Welt.
Another interesting comment is the fact that we think of certain words as being Christian words, but they're not really Christian words. It's just words that the Christians have emphasized more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Eileen, did you want to say something?
No, it's just giving me a lot of thought. I mean, I know when we go out for a walk, we look at the trees, we look at the sky, and I'm always thankful. But I guess the stretch would be for me would be to thank personally mother and father who can see who brought me to that day. I mean, they gave me life. So have I excluded them in those prayers? Not directly, but I should think more about it, I guess. So there's a lot of thought.
My take on that would be not to exclude, but not to exclude, but to incorporate, to add. Yeah. The Talmud, I think it's also Masechet Brachot, the same tractate, said that, although maybe not, I think so for some reason, but it is Talmudic to say that there are three uh, three partners. Three partners in the creation of a person. So that's the Father, the Mother, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And so, and yeah. Yes, Klaus.
I had a somewhat similar explanation in mind, which it's just an addition to what we said. As soon as I read robbing your mother and father, it brought to mind the commandment which said you must honor your mother and father, blah, blah, blah. And it seems that this person sat down and said, now, what would it be if I didn't honor my mother and father? Robbing them would be one way of dishonoring them. I made that connection. I think it's not very valid, but it came to mind immediately.
But Klaus, it certainly raises issues of what does honoring mean? I mean, in other words, the positive part of it or the negative part of it, right?
Right.
And what does it mean after they're no longer alive? Especially when we're talking about their legacy, their not only their financial legacy, but also their spiritual,
Yeah.
intellectual legacy. How do we honor them? Uh, um, yeah, and what is taking from them? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's a push towards gratitude, whatever it is, push towards gratitude to our parents. And looking around the table here, I don't think any of us, aside from Madalena, have a parent who's alive still, correct? Yeah. And Madalena's mother, may she live for many more years. But we all are considering all the time when we think of our growing up, and regardless of our experience with our parents, what are the things that we have taken? What are the blessings that we have been given from them? And Eileen's suggestion or query, I think, is important. How do we incorporate that thanks into our thanks in general of
Right.
gratitude every time we pray? One more comment, Rita Claire, and then I think we'll call it a day.
I'm just thinking about the legacy that my mother and father left to me, that hopefully I am passing on to my children, and I see evidence of that. I've been fortunate enough to see evidence of that in my own children. And I think those are the important things of actually showing your gratitude to God for being able to make the right choices in your words and your actions.
Great. Thank you. Great way to finish. Appreciate all of you being here. And we will we'll begin with the section, but I'll put out a new sheet for next week, which will hopefully enable us to finish chapter 29. But you know what? It feels to me like it was a worthwhile conversation today. See some of you tomorrow with Tobit, and thanks for being here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
May the week get better. Bye-bye. Thank you, Madalena.
Bye, you're welcome.